Welcome back to Bad Attitude C-10. After doing a little more investigating and research on this F-body pan fitting R6.0 for the Bad Attitude C-10, I found out that the trimming of the windage tray, if you're having a truck pan on your motor originally, is easy to do, but it's not really just a trim. We're actually about to cut the whole front section off of this because the F-body pan is so shallow up front that the windage tray is not even needed anyway. So let's get to it. So after doing a little more checking into this pan that I purchased off eBay, it turns out that it is a part number 302-2, which is the same as a Holley retrofit oil pan. So it's kind of weird because in the description that was up before I purchased this, which I did buy the last one and I can't find the information on it anymore, stated that it was an F-body pan. Now, according to everything that I found from Holley, and there's another company called TSP that carries the same pan, these are actually considered a retrofit pan for early model Novas, Camaros, and Chevelles, and they must be used with a late model F-body windage tray. So after finding out about all that, I actually found the picture to the windage tray, and I got to looking, and there was only 8 bolts instead of 10, and the whole front section wasn't there because the pan's so shallow it doesn't need to be there. So that led us up to the disassembly, and we're going to go ahead and do some checking and go from there. Okay guys, so if you remember, I showed y'all in the original assembly of the engine that the windage trays are marked rear. So be sure you do put the rear on the back of the block. Now, I went on ahead and put the pickup tube on, and using a soapstone, I marked where I was going to cut the windage tray in the front, and also I went on ahead and notched it for the pickup tube going down the rail. Alright, before I started cutting and grinding on this windage tray, I wanted to protect my investment, so I went on ahead and encapsulated my engine in my lawn bag. And then using a 4-inch grinder with the cutoff wheel, I made my cut, and then I cleaned it up and deburred it with a grinder. When I was finished cutting and grinding the windage tray, I used some CRC brake cleaner to go ahead and get all the residue off of my pan. I did not want any of the grinding disc material or cutoff wheel material to end up in the pan of my engine because that just wouldn't be a very good thing. So be sure, guys, and I know it's common sense, but I'm stressing, be sure you clean this stuff up anytime you're cutting on it because that dust gets everywhere. So with the windage tray in place, I put the pan on to be sure my clearance was there. And sure enough, the front of the pan went flush, and I could actually move the pan back about a ½ inch. So the placement of the cut was excellent. So as I mentioned, that dust from cutting and grinding gets everywhere, and my nuts and bolts to this were all on the table right behind the vise. So I took some more brake cleaner and a rag and cleaned all of my hardware up before installing it. The windage tray retaining nuts were torqued to 18 foot-pounds. With the windage tray in place, I then put the pickup tube on and put the retaining nut and the cap screws. And again, remember, these metal screws or bolts going into aluminum, so anti-seize was applied. The smaller cap screw / inverted hex bolt heads, whichever way you want to call them, were torqued to 106 inch-pounds. The inside bolt head close to the rail, I could not get anything on, so I took a T-handle and felt how tight the front one was and got the back one as close to it as I could. I know that's not great, but hey, it's better than nothing. After that, the retaining nut was torqued to 18 foot-pounds. It was time to move forward and install our pan. And as usual, I had to fight the pickup tube, but the baffle itself kept binding. So the back two bolts and the front two bolts of the pan are going into aluminum, so anti-seize is used. And I did not tighten the back longer bolts up. I just ran them down and left about a 1/4 inch slack in them. After doing that, I moved to the front and the bolt hose wouldn't line up. So I got a line up bar and put a little pressure, and they still didn't want to line up. And I continued to do it, and as you would know it,
certified fail.
So after sharing a few choice words with this engine, I noticed that the back of the pan was actually hitting the flanges of the retaining nuts that held our windage tray in. It wasn't the windage tray, it was the flange on the nuts themselves. So I apologize for the footage, it's kind of blurry because I tried to zoom in to show you the impressions that were left after I took a rubber mallet and tapped the back of the pan because I was trying to figure out the clearance. And I went as far as even removing the windage tray and just putting the nuts back on, and they still hit. So it wasn't the windage tray hitting in the back, it was the flange of the nuts. So after grinding down the pan, I used more brake cleaner and cleaned the oil pan out as good as I could, and I did blow it out with air after that. Then we went on ahead and reinstalled the baffle, so since it's metal bolts going into aluminum, again, anti-seize was used, and the 4 retaining bolts for the baffle were torqued to 106 inch-pounds. After that, I reinstalled the windage tray to the engine, and using a pry bar, I pushed the windage tray forward just to be safe, checked my clearance, and sure enough, voila, it fit. So we moved forward from installing it by torquing down our windage tray retaining nuts to 18 foot-pounds, installed the pan, again the front two anti-seized up, torqued to 106 inch-pounds, and the retaining nut on the pickup again would be torqued to 18 foot-pounds. So another thing I came across, the back two longer bolts that came with this new pan were actually too long and they would bottom out before you could even torque them. So I used the 2 back bolts that had been installed on the pan that was originally on my motor, the truck pan, and they fit just perfect. So again, the back 2 bolts and the front 2 bolts had anti-seize applied. And if you notice, the one not in front of the filter but right after the filter, there's nothing there. It's a blind hole. There is not a hole for a bolt there at all. So I didn't leave one out, it just doesn't have one. So I went on ahead and snugged everything up, and then using the torque wrench, all the hardware was torqued to 106 inch-pounds. After double checking the torque on the pan bolts, I went on ahead and torqued the oil bypass cover bolts to 106 inch-pounds, and then I removed the filter and went on ahead and torqued the adapter for the oil filter to 45 foot-pounds, and then I reinstalled the filter, hand tight, and went about 1/8 of a turn. So there you have it, the finished product. Our shorter pan is finally installed. So even though we had a few roadblocks in the way, we finally got it finished. As you can see, this hump right here on the front of the pan, that's actually for the clearance of the front counterweights. That's how close the front of the pan is to the crane. So till next time, please like and subscribe.